Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been asked to give a short presentation on gender balance in elected office with a focus on national elected bodies among EU member states. So I will talk about three things: what, why, and how. What is the status of equal representation of women and men in elected office today? Why do we not have gender balance in elected office? And how can we address the continued lack of gender balance in elected office? First of all, we need to underline that gender balance should not be a problem. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that everyone has the right to take part in the government of his and her country. And the Beijing Platform for Action, celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, states that achieving the goal of equal participation of women and men in decision-making will provide a better balance that more accurately reflects the composition of society and is needed to strengthen democracy and promote its proper functioning. It calls on governments to take measures to ensure women's equal access to and full participation in power structures and decision-making. And also the EU Gender Equality Strategy for 2020-2025 has a vision of a Europe where women and men, girls and boys, and all their diversity are equal, where they're free to pursue their chosen path in life, where they have equal opportunities to thrive, and where they can equally participate in and lead our European society. So there's consensus among international organizations and the EU and its member states that gender balance is to be promoted. So what is the status of gender balance in elected office today? Well, there are at least two possible narratives, the negative and the positive. I'll start with the negative. 100 years ago, women across the EU made historic gains. They won the right to vote and stand for election, and they held pioneering positions in national decision-making bodies. A century later, the composition of parliamentary assemblies often fails to reflect the gender diversity of the population they represent, with women significantly underrepresented in politics and with men, as a consequence, overrepresented. On a more positive note, the proportion of women and men in parliaments, in national parliaments across EU member states has gradually increased from 21% in 2005 to an all-time high of 30% in 2018, and that's the current level. But mixed notes can be noted. Parliaments in Sweden, Finland, Spain, Belgium, Denmark, France, and Portugal are gender balanced. They have at least 40% of each sex represented, whereas women account for less than 20% of parliamentarians in Malta and Hungary. So we have front runners and laggards. So what is the situation more concretely? So here's a picture of women's representation EU28, and the figure comes from IPU. And as we can see from this figure, only 7 member states have at least 40% women among their MPs in the national parliament. In Sweden, Finland, Spain, Belgium, Portugal, Denmark, and France. While in 17 member states, women do not even account for 1 in 3 of those holding parliamentary seats. And since 2015, progress has been made in France, Romania, and Bulgaria. Gains, but lower gains, have been made in Austria, Cyprus, and Estonia, in Ireland, Italy, and Portugal, and in Poland and the United Kingdom. And the share of women in parliaments has even declined in Croatia, Germany, Greece, and Lithuania. So in sum, the status of women's representation in politics can most likely be found in the middle of these two narratives. The percentage of women is increasing, but decline in numbers also takes place. So why do we not have gender balance in elected office? Or more specifically, why do patterns differ? Well, this is a huge research field, and I can't account for the immense literature in this field. But some conclusions can be made. The electoral systems differ, the party setups differ, and the formal rules of women in politics differ. Some countries have legislated gender quotas, such as Spain and Belgium. In some countries, party quotas have been adopted by some parties, for instance in Austria and Germany. And in some countries, there are strong norms on gender balance, such as Denmark, Finland, and Sweden. Importantly, political parties act as gatekeepers against gender equality, since they set party policy and select candidates for election. And conversely, political parties also act as door openers, since they have the power to select women candidates to represent them in elections. How can we then address the continued lack of gender balance in elected office? Well, a number of member states have taken initiatives to improve the gender balance in their parliaments. Legislated gender quotas are currently in place in 10 member states, in Belgium, Croatia, France, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Poland, Portugal, Slovenia, and Spain. And with the exception of Croatia, women's representation has improved since the adoption of a quota system. However, an equivalent or almost equivalent proportion of elected members of parliament has only been reached in Portugal and Spain. In all other cases, disparities between the quota target and women in parliament remain. Party quotas have been adopted by individual political parties in EU member states, and this measure is common among social democratic parties, green parties, and left parties, and can be found, for instance, in Austria, in Germany, and in Sweden. In some countries, no quota system is in place. For instance, Finland and Denmark. Other formal rules, soft measures, if you will, are also available, such as voluntary goals and recommendations adopted by political parties to promote gender balance. And these measures are voluntary. They have often been adopted by parties to the right and the center. Interestingly, all political parties in Sweden, except for the Populist Party, have adopted formal rules on women in elected bodies, ranging from general goals and recommendations to party quotas. In total, 7 different rules were adopted by 7 different political parties. In addition, there are also other non-quota measures available. For instance, at the civil society organizational level, examples are awareness raising, recruitment initiatives, training programs, fundraising networks. And at the political party level, examples are women's sections, recruitment initiatives, capacity building, campaign fundings. So a lot of different examples or measures are available. There are pros and cons with all these measures. Legislative gender quotas are the most efficient and fast strategy, provided that they are implemented in the right way, that they're aligned with the electoral system, and that there are sanctions for non-compliance. They cover all parties, also those with room for improvement. Party quotas are as effective as legislated gender quotas and could be a solution in countries where legislation is not an option, but where parties, usually parties to the left, are strong, like social democratic parties, left parties, and green parties. Other measures, such as voluntary goals and recommendations, could also be an option, especially if quotas are controversial or where parties agree on the goal but not on the means to reach this goal. These measures could lead to high levels of women elected, but they may also lead to fluctuations in the numbers of women elected, since they are voluntary. While there are no legislated gender quotas in Sweden, all parties except for one, from the left to the right, have adopted some kind of policy on equal representation of women and men in elected office, ranging from party quotas, recommendations, and general goals. Generally, in Sweden, there's a strong norm on gender balance in elected office, but also a strong norm that is up to party districts to decide on whom to represent them. And this is the major reason why soft policies and not legislative gender quotas have been the preferred solution in Sweden. Also in public administration and in business, soft policies have been adopted. There's a soft policy on gender balance in the boards of government agencies, in the commissions of inquiries appointed by the government, and in the boards of state-owned companies. And it works very well. Equal distribution of power and influence is one of the national gender equality objectives of Sweden. So the government follows this objective. When it comes to cabinets, cabinets have been gender balanced since the 1990s, both in right-wing governments and in left-wing governments. Although there are no rules, no formal rules about this. One strategy practiced by the government is leading by example. If the government can do its part, also political parties and private enterprise can do their parts. Importantly, this leadership role is complemented by a strong norm in the Swedish society on gender balance in decision-making bodies, and by a strong civil society, including women's organizations and also the media, that keeps this norm alive and kicking. And with this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you very much.